love racing. The Kilcunda Half Marathon. That's the first race of 2021 done and dusted. Now it's approaching 2 years since I last raced, and I knew that I liked racing. What I didn't appreciate or remember was just how much I absolutely love racing. The day before the race, I recorded my race strategy and plan, and it seemed quite solid, but everything you have on a race that's extended out, you have to allow for the distance, you have to allow for the conditions and understand pacing. And that's what I'm aiming to do. So this course, for the most part, for the first 17 kilometres, it's a mixture of trial. Turns out on the day, I was wrong about the course. Originally, I thought you had the first 17 kilometres of trail as the main part of the race, and my original plan was to come off that without having smashed my legs too much. And then you finish with about 4.1 kilometres of mainly flat, a little bit undulating, gravel trail, which is extremely runnable, and I thought that's how the race was going to go. My race plan was based on that. On race morning though, I discovered that those 4.1 kilometres, well, that was the start of the race. Then you finished with the 17 kilometres of hard trails. Now that didn't change the main goal of the race. Instead, what it did change was the execution. And the main goal of the race was to prove to myself that I could still race hard, push my limits, and get the most out of myself on a day. Let's find out how that went. Did I do it? The GPS gave 21.77 kilometres, a little bit more than the 21.1, but it's a trail race, and really, well, if we look at the overall results, I hit a 1 hour, 52 and 49 seconds. That's pending on the official results still yet to come out as I'm recording this. Average pace, 5:11 minutes per kilometre. Elevation gain, 308 metres. Now, that doesn't quite tell the whole story. Coming into the race, I was thinking I was in about 90-minute shape. From there, I thought close to 2 hours, but I wasn't sure. In my training, I'd struggled a bit on the long runs. The Achilles had been playing up, so I didn't really push any distance out there. Yes, I was doing some good solid intervals, but again, I was hitting limits on that where I couldn't push it, and I did wonder if the Achilles and calves would actually hold up.
Remember, no sitting on the track, okay? Because it'll blind someone's face.
So if we look at the course itself, and in this course, as far as trail races go, there's no absolutely massive climbs. And of particular note of the climbs is, despite being relatively short, there's quite a few of them that are really steep. Now the surface varied from easy running gravel, grass, we had some rocky, almost single track, a few little mud sections, in particular some very soft sand running. Man, that really sucked the speed out. The pace really tells the story of the kind of terrain we were at. The variation of pace is massive. Now let's bring in heart rate. Heart rate's looking good in this. This is what I want to see in a well-executed half marathon. Good basic level for heart rate with it climbing the whole way. There's little bits of up and down, and that seems to match the actual climbs themselves. Now with the drops on the downhill, I didn't take the downhills easy. In fact, the downhills were the best part of the race for me. I'm finding again some of my old form that I had years ago where I can run fast, downhill, overtake people, and my heart rate drops at the same time. It's a controlled fall, and I'm glad I put in the work years ago to really get that going. Now, I was expecting a hot race when I signed up for it. It's the start of February, traditionally a very hot time down here in Australia. Usually nice and hot down on the coast, maybe a cold night, maybe some cool winds, but I expected it to be nice and warm and get a good kick from the sun. We had a reasonable amount of rain during the run, and beforehand, maybe about a quarter of the time out there, we had some showers falling on us, and the winds were strong, probably gusting 30 to 40 kilometres an hour. It made for some good, tough running, and you know what? I loved it. Loved every moment of it. I'll tell you about my watch setup. I've got a Garmin Forerunner 230. I set my watch up with 2 key screens. The first screen, I had distance, time, and heart rate. I thought I might use them, but I knew that wasn't going to be my main screen. On the second screen, which turned out to be the screen that I used throughout the whole race, was current pace, distance covered, and the pace of the last lap. I'd also set up auto laps of every kilometre. There was a couple of benchmarks I was running with. Like, one was, would I be able to keep it under 2 hours? And that was a 5:26 pace. So if I was keeping the race underneath 5:26, then I knew I was going to be fine with under 2 hours. Of course, I knew the terrain wasn't going to allow me to keep an even pace, but I was running on feel, keeping a double check on pace, and just ticking off how I was feeling based on the race distance. I thought I might be checking the heart rate a couple of times just to see if that was going to fit with what I was doing, but I never did. I never flicked the watch over. I never checked heart rate. I had no idea what zone that was in, but I knew I was working solid, and as the race went on, I knew I was working bloody hard. I started out at 4:44, and that felt comfortable. I felt right, it felt good. I knew I wasn't pushing the pace crazily. And then a 4:41, 4:45, 4:43, and that was the runnable section. But if we look at the paces as they go along, and the pacing varies between 4:31 as my fastest kilometre down to 6:32 as my slowest. And that's terrain based, whether I'm going uphill, downhill, across soft sand, whatever. Heart rate average, 153. Which works out to be 86% of my max heart rate, which is quite gold for a half marathon. And max heart rate, 166, works out to be about 93, 94% of my max heart rate, which I achieved in the last 700 metres of the race. So how did the legs go? The legs went pretty well. For the first portion of the race, definitely for the first 10 kilometres, I felt so in control. I felt like my form was pretty good. My form struggled a bit on the really steep uphills, but I knew that was going to be the case because I hadn't pushed the hills in training because of the Achilles. I wasn't really having a drive or a push off. Instead, it was more placing one foot in front of the other rather than pushing off and getting that extra spring. I would like to be in a situation where I could use that extra spring. If it was easy, it wouldn't feel so good. So that was a little bit of leg saving technique that I put in, and I think it paid off. I'd say the last 4 to 5 kilometres, it was ugly running. I'm not too sure if I could have run that race any faster by trying anything else. I loved being out there. The coast is amazing. The views are spectacular. Thanks for joining me on this journey too, guys. All the support has really helped me through the training. The motivation is great, and it just helps a lot just sharing this. The tips and tricks that you guys have fed in have been great, and I've loved the discussions I've had with so many people. We've got a great running community. We'll see you on the next adventures.
I reckon they